Live. And we are live. Like the Olympics right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You see, you threw me for. I had one.
You had something.
I had something. I'm going to come back to it. What's your favorite weird sport, guys? Weird Olympic sport.
I like the Winter Olympics. I like those crazy, like the ones where they ski down a mountain and then have to fire guns and then keep skiing and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Summer Olympics. I've been watching the Gold Zone.
Oh yeah, I love to go to the Gold Zone. See, get the dubs. Nothing but dubs.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so awesome. If anybody here watches football, they basically took NFL Red Zone, including the NFL Red Zone hosts, and have them doing Gold Zone for the Olympics, and it's rad.
Well, that and on Peacock, you can also get like the live. It's like the Olympic broadcast service feeds that go out to all the national channels. So you get like it's like a 4K quad with 4 1080p windows of like everything happening on the floor at like fencing or judo or gymnastics or whatever at once, which has been fantastic to watch.
So good. I still don't understand fencing, but I can't stop watching it.
We talked about fencing for like an hour at lunch today. It's just so fast.
Yeah.
Like it all happens insanely fast.
Yeah, apparently Alex is pretty good at fencing.
Yeah. He's a fencer. He's been fencing for 20 years, he said. So don't challenge him to a duel.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
But is it actually rooted in an actual sort of weapon, or I mean,
gentlemanly combat, Gordon. You don't.
Oh,
you know,
got it.
yeah.
You
know, it's pinkies out sword fighting. It's not like, as he said, there's places you cannot score. So if you hit the wrong part of the body, even if you get first, no points.
It just seems. I just assumed it was like, because a lot of sports are. Well, I guess not. I'm just trying to think of what that is even based possibly on. That's yeah. I'm not going to say anything about the Olympics and insult everybody. So
no, please.
The Olympic sport that I really want to see is PVC pipe LARPing.
What is that?
See, the PVC pipe LARPing, like the LARPing where you make your own swords and all that crazy stuff. Go do live action playing in a park. Those are actually super awesome. And I would love to see that on TV.
We were watching last night synchronized diving, which like I get. Hey, I'm gonna see who can run the fastest, right? Like that seems like a really straightforward place to get. But hey, I'm gonna jump off of a 3-meter springboard and like time it and do the exact same thing in exactly the same way, so I'm the most in sync with the other person. Seems like a really like arbitrary increase in degree of difficulty on an already hard sport. So I really like that. I enjoy it. I think it's cool.
Does it? I have a question though. Do you think it's like some of the sports, like swimming?
Yeah.
Isn't it just like?
Oh, here it comes.
Because my wife was telling me about like some comedian stand-up she saw where it was like he was making fun of the Olympic swimming, but like. Isn't it? Why is it always got to be like? Why is it like? Okay, now we're gonna time you swimming on your back, and then we're gonna time you swimming in this style, and like I don't. It's like a Monty Python funny walk kind of like a thing almost.
Well, they used to have competitive walking, right? There used to be speed walking. I think that's no longer an Olympic sport now.
Are you serious?
There's a Cary Grant movie about the 1960 Tokyo Olympics called Walk Don't Run, where Cary Grant is this like incredibly attractive man who goes to the Olympics. He's like staying in a host family's house. Everybody keeps asking him what Olympic sport he's in. He's kind of demure and just kind of pushes off the conversation and doesn't say what he does because he's embarrassed that he's a speed walker. Because the rule is like you have to keep a foot on the ground. I think you can never have both feet off the ground or something. So yeah. Anyway, Walk Don't Run. Pretty good Cary Grant movie. It's a good Cary Grant comedy.
I would not be embarrassed by that whatsoever. I'd be all over that. I'd be like, yeah, I'm in the Olympics because I walk better than you and everybody that you know.
I mean, that's the thing that's cool about the Olympics always is like when you're watching table tennis or fencing or whatever, seeing somebody who's like the best 100th% in the world at this thing that they do, always entertaining.
It is amazing.
I was watching badminton with my homie the other day.
So
and
good.
It's like, 70% of it, it's like, oh, we could do this. And then they go into some insane back and forth stretch that lasts 4 minutes straight, just jumping, hitting the things between their legs. It's like, oh, I can't do this. I get it now.
I used to go do badminton at the gym in South San Francisco before the pandemic, and It's like sometimes people you usually play with don't show up, and so somebody else is just like, hey, you want to play? And I played with this guy who's probably 70 years old, 65 years old, who just absolutely destroyed me. And I'd been playing for like 2-3 years at this point. I was okay. And it's just it's such a high skill thing, even though it doesn't look like a high skill thing at all when you're watching like people whack one around on the beach or whatever. Gordon, I have a question for you.
Okay, you should stop me before I insult all Olympic.
Yeah, it's probably you've done really well so far. You've controlled yourself. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I think I've done pretty well. So
there's a shot from Die Hard that I don't understand why it isn't available as like, when you search for like GIFs for memes or whatever, and it's the one where the German guy is chainsawing through all the cables and taking out the phone and power for the building, because like that's the perfect GIF for, hey, the internet's down, right? And it's not like I don't know how to either. I can't search for it, or it's not on Tenor or Jiffy or whatever. It's yeah. Why is it not there? That's my question for you. Do people hate Die Hard?
Because it's either Hans or it's either Hans or Bruce Willis, and there's really nobody cares about much else, right? So, although it's funny, so I mean, sorry to I know people want to talk technology here, but I watched the Beverly Hills Cop movie that's on Netflix now.
Wait, like the original Beverly Hills Cop, or is it a do-over?
It's a new one.
There's a new one, and then I watched 1 and 2, and then it was just funny because it's very similar and I realized like, wait a minute, so your bad guy is somebody with some heavy European accent.
Yeah,
like it's just like, wait, it's just like a cheap Hans. I need to figure out who came out first, but like Hollywood was definitely on like, okay, bad guy has an Austrian accent or something like that. I think Hans, so is he Austrian or German? I forget what it is.
I feel like they were East German, right? Weren't they like an East German Terracell, or was that the third one?
Well, they weren't actually
right.
Terracell. He read about it in Time magazine, I think. So,
but I mean, I get
Die Hard.
Yeah, you're not. But I mean, I feel like there was a lot of fear in that time in the '80s of like East German infiltrators because they look just like us and they could, the Russians are coming.
Yeah, maybe. We are burning valuable time because Brad has a hard out. We're wasting time. I have luckily not insulted all of the Olympics.
Good job.
Which is very good.
On air, at least.
Yeah.
On air, at least. So, because I tend to say things that are bad. So, but we are going to be talking internet about, what are we talking about? Where are my notes? Kind of buried somewhere.
Ryzen 9000 being delayed.
Yeah, Ryzen 9000. Any updates? Not really.
There's
AFMF.
rumors. Hot rumors on that 9000 delay.
That's really the reason to talk about it. Strix point reviews, and then a quick update on what's, I guess, Intel's basically talking about Lunar Lake already again. So
hot news.
I don't know what you mean about already. It's still not coming out for a while. They've been talking about a bunch already.
I mean, it's just basically a month now, right?
Yeah, but still, the fact that they are so actively. Well, we'll talk about it on the end. Should I kick this off, Willis?
Yep, go ahead.
Everybody ready?
Ready.
Okay to go.
Oh, I almost read the wrong damn line. In this episode, okay. Move mic. In this episode of The Full Nerd, Ryzen 9000 delayed, AFMF2 preview, Strix point reviews, and Lunar Lake is coming. And your questions asked and answered. Hopefully. Welcome to episode 311 of The Full Nerd, which is also a number you dial on the phone to get help other than police, apparently. I'm your host, Gordon Mong, with co-host Brad Charkis.
Hello, I have my Diet Pepsi once again, and I'm ready to opine.
Will Smith is holding down the fort at the PCWorld headquarters desk.
I'm filling the Beardo in the office role today, and you did a good job with that AFMF read, Gordon. That's a tough one.
It's really hard not to. Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. And Willis Lai is running the vertical and horizontal.
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday.
Adam is not here because I know everybody wants to know where Adam is. He is busy.
On assignment.
Busy.
On stuff.
Yeah.
Take that as how that whatever that means. It actually may mean nothing. he could be chomping a sandwich somewhere right now.
We put him on a timeout.
Look, I went into the fridge to grab a Croy, and all they had were lime. And I was like, Adam, you got to get different Croy flavors in here if you expect us to participate and work and be full of good thoughts. So
I
you
hope
gotta
I
stay
didn't make
hydrated for these 2-hour episodes.
Yeah.
Man. You gotta stay hydrated with the good stuff.
Yeah. I'm hoping I didn't make a mistake because we got the Costco brand the other day. Somebody went to Costco. Was like, "Oh, do you want the some fizzy water?" "Oh yeah," and I wasn't paying attention. I said, "Yeah, sure." To the Kirkland brand. So I'm hoping it's
probably fine.
Brand it's probably just rebranded LaCroix anyway, right?
Trader Joe's is rebranded Polar, so maybe Kirkland is rebranded Croy. Who knows?
Yeah, hopefully.
Let us know.
I'm hoping. I mean, it can't really get any worse though, right? So.
Don't anger the fizzy water people, Gordon.
Yes. Well, we're going to kick this off because Brad has got a heart out. We're going to start this. I want to give a shout out to one of the most respected tech journalists around still. Paul Alcorn wrote a story saying the reason, well, if you don't know, that Ryzen 9000 was officially delayed by AMD last week. They say it wasn't up to their standards, but this is a salacious detail that Paul Alcorn wrote a story about in Tom's Hardware, basically saying AMD may have delayed Ryzen 9000 launch due to a typo.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Mislabeled Ryzen 7 chip emerges. Ryzen 5 9600X impacted too. So basically, Tom's Hardware story has a picture of a AMD Ryzen 9 9700X, which, by the way, is incorrect because the 9700X is a Ryzen 7 part, I believe. Yes.
So it has the right model number, but the wrong 7 or 9 is the thought.
That's what, got people kind of like chuckling over the weekend. Frankly, I thought it was pretty hilarious because it was very nebulous. AMD basically came out and they said, hey, we're delaying launch of Ryzen 9000 desktop parts for a week on some parts, I think a couple weeks on the other parts. And they basically didn't say what the problem was, just that it didn't meet their standards. And the chips that were out there were going to be rescreened to meet those standards. And also, they did want to point out that not every single chip that was out there was impacted. They have really no idea. They just want to do this one other check. And no other word what exactly they want to check. So it's funny that soon after somebody has put out what they claim is this mislabeled Ryzen 9 9700X. So people are like, what? Did you really delay it just because the CPU has the wrong laser engraving on it?
I mean, I get why they would do that because you don't want to have like official counterfeit, like you don't want to have it adds a resale problem down the road where there's going to be the wrong chip with the right chip with the wrong label on it, and it's going to make a lot of confusion in the channel, and especially for like loose part sales. But it seems like I almost, for me, a mistake that is like, hey, we discovered a problem with this assembly or with this package or something late in the process that we didn't test for on the early runs of these CPUs. Yeah. That seems less bad to me than, hey, we just had a typo on the heat spreaders and we got to redo a bunch of these. That feels that feels like some real bad news bears business to me.
Really? You think that is just simply because it makes consumers go like, if you can't even put the right label on this thing, then what can I trust you with anything else? You really think that's worse than, oh, we didn't screen these things and you might miss 50 megahertz off of it?
Look, we've all worked in editorial for a long time, right? Like, I feel like this is the one time ever that we're able to come out and say, look, we understand typos, okay?
Oh, yes.
There is the process for missing typos, for catching typos, very easily established. You just need a lot of people to look at it a lot of times along the way. And then everybody has to check off on it. Like you sign the page after you look at it, and problem solved. So what's their editorial process?
I have 2 bits I can add to this. One being, we saw Paul Alcorn's news, which is based off of a Billy forum report. Within minutes of it going live, and we reached out to AMD immediately to ask about it. And it didn't even take 30 seconds. Just immediately got we're not saying anything beyond what we said in our initial report. So, they were on top of it. That's neither a confirmation nor a denial, but they were real quick to get that back to us. And two, yes, I've worked in editorial for a long time, but before that, I was actually the inspection lead at an industrial sapphire fabrication facility where we made a bunch of cool parts for like military and medical and semiconductor use.
Oh, wow.
So it's actually kind of insane to me coming from that background that this could happen, because the first batch that comes off of any line back when I worked entailed a full inspection of every single item on the checklist, not just the physical dimensions, all that kind of thing, but you did look and make sure, hey, is this say what it's supposed to say? Because if not, we need to let somebody know right now. And then you would go through and do that. It depends on how many parts you're running through and everything, but there's, if you're running 100 parts, you pick 10 out or 4 out or whatever your chart says, and you pick it out and you do that full 100% inspection nonetheless. So it's wild to me that this could come through at this scale.
If true.
But
if
true, 100%, don't know. But this is about the best outcome I think it could have been. This is just like, oh, that's silly. That sucks. Okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
A friend of the show, Adam Patrick Murray in chat, says, I have a couple of vinyl records with typos that are valuable. I'd love a chip with a typo on it. So, these will be collectible maybe. I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah. I was kind of wondering what the ramifications of, say, like, of course, they didn't say how, again, we're going off the assumption that maybe this is what the rescreening process is, but what happens if you leave those parts out? Does it leave you because I always think of like the no fun lawyers that show up and like, oh, you sold my client this Ryzen 7, but it said Ryzen 9. I'm gonna give me $200,000, and it's like, okay, you don't want to end up in one of those. But then there are plenty of typos that have happened over the years to everything, right? I mean, could you imagine like a magazine again being sued for typos? I'd be like, well, you'd have to sue everybody every single time because there's typos everywhere. So
yeah,
it just, I guess the harm is pretty low. So
well, but I mean, the difference is that time that we sent out the magazine with Maxim PC on the cover, we weren't promising that was going to be 3% faster than the one that was labeled Maximum PC. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like it had to be a pretty significant number of them, or they wouldn't have delayed the whole launch. Is the thing?
Yes.
Or whatever the problem is.
Yeah, we still don't know, and maybe they're just getting a good chuckle out of this because it's like, oh yeah, actually it's far more serious. A bunch of the chips were coming in snapped in half because we had some dumbass packaging them, and because of the no fault belief philosophy we have. We didn't fire that person, so we just moved them around the company to screw around everything else. So
it's true. Yeah, blameless retrospectives are the future. This is how you avoid having this problem in the future, as you find out where the process failed. It's not the people that fail; it's the process that fails. Manufacturing these days.
Yeah, I just don't. It's hard to believe that you would not. For me, I've never heard of that philosophy, and I don't believe in it because it doesn't make any sense. So.
Here's the thing, though: is if it's somebody in the line who didn't follow the process, then that is not the blameless retrospective turns into a blame retrospective. I think at that point, right?
Yep.
But if the process was there and established, then you shouldn't have this problem. This shouldn't be possible. So
well, I guess so. Again, my last comment here is like it does seem silly, like. Okay, you've screwed this up really badly. We want to know who screwed this up really badly. I'm not going to step across. And I'm like, look, we're not going to blame anybody. We just want you to step across that line so we know who screwed this up. If you screwed up, raise your hand and step across the line. Because I can tell you damn well what's going to happen. Be like, you, gone, cut, immediately. In fact, don't go to your locker. We'll load it up for you in a box. Get out now.
No.
I like a picture when I heard this news is that episode of The Simpsons where like he's on the naval boats and stuff and he's like, it's my first day. And all the penguins and stuff start laughing.
See, I was thinking about the one where they ask who made the mistake and everybody else steps back and the guy who just stands there is like, what? Wait, what? It wasn't me. Yeah, I don't know. Did it hit financials? Did they take a hit on this? Friend of the show, Tech Potatoes says something about financials today.
I can't imagine. Again, I love desktops. So we all love desktops. They are the center of our galaxy. But I don't think Wall Street would care if desktops, like, they don't even show up on their radar, frankly. So desktops just aren't a big deal to them for the most part, I don't think.
They're down over the last 2 weeks, but I don't. Who knows what that is?
Who knows? It's like, oh, maybe they didn't pronounce AI right correctly, so that somebody in Wall Street is like, no,
So they say
If
I.
this is the issue, if this is the issue, like, it's something that can be easily corrected. Everyone face palmed and laughed at it, but in the grand scheme of things, if this was the issue, like, you'll have a chuckle about it in 5 years. For now, it's causing some embarrassment, but nobody's going to remember this a month from now. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, once the chips are out, nobody's then they'll go on to screaming about this benchmark versus that benchmark and this and the usual sort of pony riding there. But I don't think anybody's going to care about this. But it's just funny to think that it really could literally just be like, oh, we didn't label these things correctly. That would be
and also if it's like, because it's not like there's a Ryzen 7 9700, right? It's only a Ryzen 9 9700. So if one of the numbers is right and the other number's wrong, like I don't know. Like, if it was, the unfortunate thing is it was on the box, they just put a sticker over it and call it a day. And since it's on the heat spreader, presumably presumably all those parts get binned, because I don't think they can pop the heat spreader off and put a new one on. How would that even work?
And you know what I would love even more than a Ryzen 9 9700X misprint? A Ryzen 9 9700X that just, they take it and they etch the 9 out and put a little 7 over it. Like
just
kids,
just
like teachers does when you're in grade school. Yeah.
Squiggles. Oof.
Yeah, they I think at AMD they have a machine they can do the laser etching. It's probably for a lot of the early engineering samples and press samples they have to send out, because when the original Threadripper launched, they actually sent everybody personalized Threadrippers.
What?
Like, I have one that has the PCWorld logo and Gordon on there, I think.
That's so
cool. Does it have Gordon? It has the PCWorld logo somewhere on my desk somewhere. But it's really neat. Came in a little lucite block, and we always like, and the cool thing is you could actually take it out of there. It was like, hey, maybe we should put this in a board and see if it posts. But I'm sure there's nothing in it that worked.
Well, what are heat spreaders made of? Are they aluminum?
Oh, heck, I don't know. There's some nickel, there's some copper. I don't know what's in. They probably have different formulas for how they do their heat spreaders.
Yeah, because you can laser aluminum with like a CO2, like a cheap CO2 laser. You need something more powerful to do more hardy metals. But yeah.
Yeah, I imagine they have something, and it didn't look quite as clean as if you actually got a factory laser etched Ryzen, but it was still pretty neat to have one with they could put an amazing amount of information on there, like to actually be able to put the PCWorld logo on there and actually have it look pretty good. It was like, oh, that's actually pretty neat. You would think like they should sell a personalized version of the CPUs. Like you could order it and then it would have information on the heat spreader laser printed on there. That'd be pretty neat.
I mean, like when you buy an iPhone, you get it etched on the get it etched with your name on the back.
Yeah. Is that real? Is that a real thing?
Yeah, you can, almost all Apple stuff you can get engraved, laser engraved. It takes extra
from the
time.
factory.
Yeah. Or
wow.
So instead of getting it, like, you can't get this obviously the same day thing, but it'll come from China with the engraving on the next overnight trip.
And I take it back. All the mean things I've said about Apple, and basically there not being actually any way to personalize anything. Apparently, you can personalize your Apple hardware and software.
Yeah, you can reduce the resale value by putting your name on the back.
But what if they make a typo and just say, Wallace instead of Willis?
Then it's worth more.
Then your name's Wallace at that point. I'm sorry. Yeah. You just have to change your name.
Well, I have this funny idea though. What did you think of, like, if, again, we really don't know, because it's just kind of a funny little chuckle thing. If it really was mislabeled chip that's out there, what if AMD said, like, you know what, we probably have an idea that maybe it's only a few hundred or maybe it's 1,000 of these things. Let it ride. And if you got one of those mislabeled chips, you basically have a Willy Wonka golden ticket. I put this out on X.com, but like it'd be like, so you're like, oh my god, I got a Ryzen 9 9700X. Like, oh, you know what? You can come take a tour of AMD, and and the Oompa Loompas would come out and sing or whatever. But
it's like Homer Simpson running through the land of chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would that work? I mean, or is that just like I would like that would be cool. Again, like to get something that they mislabeled is always more valuable. So
I mean, I think that would be cool. Like, I think that like, hey, make this a contest rather than a punishment. That sounds good to me. Hey, if you find a mislabeled Ryzen, you get the prize, and then that'll encourage people to turn those back in. You don't have to take the hit.
Right.
Now, if there's 50,000 of them, then that breaks down, right?
Yeah, because then you also have to like, what are you going to do? Like, get the what's the closest football stadium to Austin? They have 2 football teams there. I don't.
Yeah, Texas.
I don't think of them
Dallas
because I can't think of the last time they ever won anything.
But also the University of Texas is in Austin, and I'm pretty sure they have a football team.
Oh, okay. So they'd have to have an entire football stadium in order to get like everybody. No.
Well, but the real question is like, I guess Intel is Slugworth in this metaphor. Are they buying up all of these CPUs to try to get inside looks at the AMD fabs so they can like do some industrial espionage on the Wonka ticket?
That would be. Was that what happened in there? I don't remember. It's been such a long time. Well, and then there was that remake with Johnny Depp too, right?
We don't talk about that one, but the one with Mr. Dune,
Gene Wilder.
No, the remake, the new
with Timothy Chalamet.
Timothy Chalamet,
yes.
Yeah, is pretty good. I'm gonna give
one?
a thumbs up to that one. Yeah, it's just called Wonka. The Johnny Depp ones are terrifying though.
It's a Wonka origin story. You know how Wonka became Wonka.
Yeah, it's good. Anyway, I don't want to spoil anything. You should watch that one. It's worth watching. You'll love it.
I just thought it'd be hilarious because then you get your Willy Wonka CPU ticket. You get the people come out and do the song, the singing.
Yeah,
it was more musical, right? I mean,
the Wilder one for sure.
Yeah,
and like
Wilder,
you ride in a boat on the molten silicon, stick your hand in, get the molten silicon out, and you're like, I'm holding the CPU. I'm holding the CPU.
It would just be awesome. They could just like, it's one of those like fantasies where they spend like, $500,000 in order to remake a whole bunch of Willy Wonka references for this tour.
Yeah, one of the badly behaved kids gets coated in a couple of atoms of gold all the way over, and yeah, it's fantastic.
I was just thinking like, if like in that meeting at AMD. Like, so it's like, hey, what if AMD hired Gordon? And then you're sitting in the big boardroom, and then like, and then Willy Wonka and Oompa Loompas, and then you're just kind of like thinking of like Lisa, kind of like, that's really interesting. Do we have that no fire thing going?
Yeah,
because it'd be like, what are you? That's insane. What are you, nuts?
No,
like that definitely seems like something like, yeah, no. How did you get hired here? But.
Yeah, that's when you get. Wow, I really love that idea. What else do you have, Brad? What's next? So should we talk about the AFMFs? Or you feel like there's
what does that stand for? Yes, I think, unless are there any outstanding questions from this lighthearted segment, Willis? Otherwise, we're going to move on to AFMF.
Let's move on to AM. I'm already.
Oh, there you go. Who's
AFMF 2? What's going on there, Gordon?
Apparently it's I haven't kept on current events, but apparently Brad can probably talk about this more than me. But it's basically DLSS from AMD, right? Essentially, if I got that right.
Kind of. FSR3 is DLSS from AMD. AMF.
Oh, you're right. Is it frame generation? Frame gen.
Yeah, is AMD Fluid Motion Frames, which is still frame generation for them, but it's the technology that you find in FSR3, but put in at a driver level. So it works across thousands of games. It works across pretty much every DirectX recent game, I believe. And it came out right around the same time as FSR3. The whole idea is if games don't support it, you can turn this on and still use it in any games because it's at the driver level. There's some issues with latency and different things like that with the first, iteration of it, as you would expect, because DLSS 3, one of the requirements is to have NVIDIA reflex in the game to drive that latency back down. And you obviously can't mandate that when you're doing it at a driver level. So this geez, fluid motion frames. I'm just gonna say fluid motion frames 2 from now on as metal AF.
So that's
Fluid motion
FMF.
frames.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has a bunch of little improvements to make it everything better. One of the big additions is that it now supports Vulkan and OpenGL games. So
Oh.
that's great.
Oh wow.
Yeah, before it didn't. Now it does. Before it's DirectX only. There are a couple of different performance improvements that you'll find in there as well. Coming in 2024, you'll be happy to hear that AMD says they're enhanced by AI.
Weird.
Yeah.
Wow.
Don't really know what that means, but yeah, AI is involved in some way. One of the first ones is called search mode. So sometimes fluid motion frames frame generation, quoting here, is temporarily disabled in high motion scenes to ensure the best interpolated image quality because it can cause judder that impacts smoothness when it has to go into this fallback mode. And now they have a setting that they had a standard fallback mode before. Now they have an auto setting that can kick it a high. It's called high. They don't really do a good job of explaining what it is, but it's called high, and it will at 1440p or greater improve performance when it has to go into that fallback mode. So that's cool. I don't really know too many of the details there. They just spend a quick paragraph or two saying, hey, this exists now. So that's cool. More importantly, there's performance improvements. So there's now a performance mode. Quality is the default. It's what it was before. There's a new high performance mode where, depending on the GPU that you're using, especially if it's lower powered, they specifically call out AMD APUs that use Radeon graphics. They can switch into this high performance mode that reduces the overhead needed to make the frame generation, so you can get higher frame rates. I'd assume it impacts visual quality in some way, but it will improve the frame rates there.
Well, it means half of your frames are fake, basically, right? Or generated frames.
Yeah.
Sorry, fake is strong.
It depends on the implementation. That's the tricky part about all these. It really does depend on what they do and how they do it. But they say, if you're using integrated graphics, you're going to want to use this high mode. Both of these, I believe, are going to be set to automatic to begin with. So it's just auto detect what your hardware is and figure out what's, best for your particular rig. Maybe that's where the AI comes in. They've also worked at lowering the latency with the frame generation. As I said, that was a big issue because you don't have a reflex-like thing necessarily to drive the latency back down that these generated frames.
Sorry, that's my bad.
Introduce. So they've been working on that, obviously. They particularly call out Cyberpunk 2077, where they say we combine fluid motion frames 2 with their anti-lag technology, which is something you can turn on at a driver level. It's 28% lower latency, running at 4K using ray tracing ultra. So, 30% lower latency is a big deal.
Well, it depends on where they started too, right? I think with the testing I saw on this was it brings it down from 50 milliseconds to 30, 28 milliseconds, 35 milliseconds or something.
And you could feel every bit of that if that's the case.
Yeah, I think once you get under about 20, it probably doesn't matter anymore. But especially if you're playing on a gamepad, but above that, I think it'll feel floaty. It also works on borderless windows, which I thought was nice because I don't know about you, but I haven't played a game in full screen mode in years at this point since I got 2 monitors, I think. And
borderless windows is the way to go, and it was only exclusive full screen to begin with.
Yeah. So it's interesting that they're doing all this stuff at the driver level. I mean, that seems like the right way to do it. We haven't done any testing with this yet, right? Because it just came out last night.
Not with this one, no.
Okay.
Not a formal deep dive, but I played around with the original version, and it depends on the game, it depends on the frame rates you're getting, it depends on all the usual caveats for this kind of stuff. But you definitely do feel the latency more than you would with something like DLSS 3 or even FSR 3, because those are baked right into the games and they have everything you need to get fixed. So I'm excited to see them making all these additions, actually.
Yeah, Do you know how they get the vector data out of the game when it's running at the driver level, or did they just not? Did they not have to get the vector? Because it used to be they got the vector data to provide kind of direction for the frame generator. Temporal information.
I didn't do my homework. I knew that answer 6 months ago, but I can't tell you that off the top of my head.
Well, I would imagine they'd just be able to. Couldn't I mean, if you're running at the driver level, can't they just basically look at the next 3 frames that are coming out? I mean, I would imagine that's how they would do it, or
maybe, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting how, to me, the confusing part about this whole technology is how it takes advantage of the game having multiple frames in flight at any given time, so that it can operate 3 frames ahead in some cases and know when there's going to be lag. Like, one of the other things that they do with this is it integrates with their like frame rate limiting to reduce the thermal overhead now, so that you can say, hey, set the frame rate to half of my monitors refresh, and then we'll fill in the rest of the frames with the generated frames, which is like, it's amazing to me that that's cheaper than just running the frames through the normal graphics pipeline. But also, I mean, I guess that's great for potential handheld solutions and stuff like that, if nothing else, right?
Yeah, definitely. That would be great in handheld solutions. That'd be great. Does like the Steam Deck make a lot of AMD features like serviceable to users, or do you have to use your own Valve things?
Well, so the problem with the Steam Deck is it's RDNA 2. So I think all of this stuff is RDNA 3 and newer, right?
Yep. But yeah, that's a great use for that. It's also Radeon Chill is the name of the frame rate limiter. It's great. I know it gets heavier use in Europe than it does over here because of the electricity.
Oh, right. Okay.
I know you pay a lot more for electricity in Europe than you do in the US. So I know that I don't know if a lot of people, but there was a vocal minority who were very upset that this didn't work with the first generation fluid motion frames. So that's another good addition. Like, AMD is basically going through, this is a solid, feature improvement update across the board, and they're continuing to work on it.
Was the original AFMF also driver based as well?
Yes. So when FSR 3 came out, it has, normal FSR upscaling. The other component is these fluid motion frames working together in tandem by the game developers, inserted into the games. It's called FSR 3. This is the driver level version of that. And it came out, I think, I want to say, not at the same time as FSR 3, but around the beginning of this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't kept up on the pulse of the internet. Are people still angry at frame generation?
I think so.
Fake frames, or have they finally accepted that is a reasonable path? That's probably the path forward for a lot of performance improvements for graphics vendors.
So we did an episode and talked about this on the Tech Pod a few months ago, and the reaction was really polarized. It was all the way one way or the other. Some people were like, I want all the frame generation stuff turned on for games like Cyberpunk so I can crank the ray tracing all the way up, and I'd rather it be shiny and a little floaty than not. And some people were like, no, I'm never ever going to turn that stuff on. And I don't think anybody does like market research publicly about consumer sentiment in this space. So I think that anecdotal is the best we get on that. And it seems like Chad here today is pretty evenly divided between I'm never turning that on, and if they make me turn it on, I'm gonna never play that game, or, oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, that's basically how I feel about it too. Like, it's a great option to have, is the way I look at it. Like, I'm glad that it's around. I know with normal upscaling, not frame generation, some games are starting to take that into account when they're doing their spec lists, their minimum specifications and stuff. And I don't love that super much. I think if it ever a game released and they said, hey, we need DLSS 3 or fluid motion frames or FSR 3, we'd see an uproar about it. But as long as it's just, a cherry on top, cool. Use it if you want, don't if you don't want.
I mean, it's interesting because are the Xbox Series, they're RDNA 2, and the PlayStation 5 are both RDNA 2, right? Or are they RDNA 3?
That's like 2.5, I think.
Yeah, it's souped up 2 basically. So yeah, I was gonna say if those were RDNA 3, that could give us a back half console lifetime perf boost, especially on ray tracing stuff. I think, to me, this is a driver level thing. In order to use this, you have to install a special driver right now. And presumably in the future, when it's integrated in the main driver, you have to flip on some setting in the driver. I think it's on by default on the shipping test driver right now. But I would assume that this is a turn on for a fairly long time setting when they integrate it with the main Radeon drivers. So
1,000%. It's the existing fluid motion frames, because again, like you said, this is technical preview. They want people to check it out, let them know how it goes. So if you have a Radeon graphics card, go find this post, download the driver, test it out, let them know if you have any issues. But it's part of they call it HyperRX, HYP-RX suite, where it turns on a bunch of these different AMD features that are designed to make games get higher frame rates, use less power and stuff like that. And it's integrated into that. You have to flip that on, and then you can go through and flip on other options.
And for me, these things are all like, I would never flip this on in a competitive game that I want to run at 300 frames a second, right? I would turn settings down rather than generate frames. But on a single player game that I want to look really nice on a 4K TV, I'm gonna absolutely, I don't have a problem with this.
For me, I love it in the games that are genuinely CPU bound. Like, that's what NVIDIA was positioning this as when DLSS 3 first came out. You remember it came out in Flight Simulator.
Yeah.
And basically you could double your frame rate because it was CPU, even on the fastest CPUs, hard locked to about 60. But you flip this on and it still looks great, and you could get 120. And it did make a tangible difference. Like, you could see it. You could not feel it as much because, again, frame generation makes it weird. It doesn't feel as fast as it looks as it's going, but in a game like that, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of games where I love this sort of technology. But I would never turn this on when I'm playing Call of Duty or Rainbow Six or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's funny because looking at the chatter here on YouTube, Arcane points out it seems like what you run into a lot, especially when we saw frame generation originally introduced by NVIDIA. But, Arcane, I'm not calling you out anything. I'm just sort of like, just pointing out your point of view that frame gen discourages hardware innovation in graphics, right? And he pretty much, or she uses the term fake frames, which a lot of people, disparaged frame gen on NVIDIA originally. And I would fundamentally disagree as far as the fake frame verbiage, because I'm very much a believer that you have to use as accurate language as possible, and they are fake frames. But I think the argument, though, is they're all fake frames because none of it's real. It's just simply, it's a rendered frame from a graphics card in a video game on a computer, and there's nothing actually real about any of it. So that's why I kind of, my problem with calling them fake frames is it biases people against them, and it really makes you think like, oh, these are, like, I want real frames. Well, there's no such thing as an actual real frame in some ways, if you think about it. So
yeah, I think it all comes down to performance and what you see in your final games, right? Like, that's really a differentiator. When DLSS first came out, people were like, this is fake, this isn't right, because DLSS 1 looked like you smeared Vaseline on your screen, and it was terrible. And then DLSS 2 came out, and next thing you know, everyone's like, DLSS, that's a killer feature for NVIDIA. AMD has nothing to compete. Everyone loves it. I think I think it's really smart and great that the industry is starting to lean more into software tricks to try to drive performance even further. And I'm not against it whatsoever, even though it makes my job harder. But I think this stuff's cool as hell.
Yeah, and if you also think about it, it's not necessarily bad to get more performance, a sense, and you could say it's for free, but optimization by doing frame generation or supporting a new instruction set in a CPU or doing this, if that gives you more performance on your actual current hardware and lets you stretch it out for a longer period of time, that can ultimately be a good thing for you. You don't have to buy a new graphics card every year, which nobody was doing anymore anyway. But I think, except for the people who just want to buy the brand new thing every year, I think it's fine to get as much performance out of the existing hardware with, again, we could kindly call them optimization, but you're just squeezing more performance out of the hardware. And why not do that if it applies to certain things? As Brad said, like competitive play, high frame rate, no. But, beautiful AAA, artful game, you don't mind having those generated frames, right? So I think that's fine.
So here's my real question. Would you rather run at 30 frames per second, smooth 30 locked with motion smoothing on, or 60 with your generated frames? smooth 30.
Again, I think it's like what Brad says. It's situational. It comes down to the game. You know, if it gives it a bit of a floaty feel and actually is hurting your performance in a, you know, in an online Twitch shooter, then yeah, then I wouldn't. But man, being stuck down at 30 frames, I don't know. It feels like that's like it's a no-win scenario. You're just like, it's gonna kind of stink no matter what.
Here's actually where the intricacies of generated frames get you. You want to be as close to 60 frames per second or higher as you can be, because if you try turning this on when you're getting 30 frames per second in a thing, to double it or whatever to try to get up to 60, you're going to have so much latency lag off of that.
Oh, yeah.
You want to try to be up at 60 as much as you want. So I will take smooth 30 in this particular scenario, but this is not a scenario you should be using fluid motion frames.
But, you know, again, if you're trying to play, you know, a high competitive, you know, esports game at 30 frames a second, you're there to improve somebody else's scores. You're just there to get wasted early on in the game. I is my feeling. I don't know if that holds up anymore, but I'm kind of like, until I actually see evidence that being stuck down at 30 frames a second in a high frame rate game.
Look, we can do that test. We can lock you at 30. I'm going to get my 360 megahertz hertz display going. We'll play some Counter-Strike 2. Let's go head to head, Gordon.
Well, I mean, but I think we know the answer there, right? Because there's definitely, you're just going to want higher frame rates as much as possible in those kind of games.
Yeah.
And the frame gen doesn't get you everything there, but I mean, that's kind of like a lousy situation to be in. But again, it's a tool, right? It's a tool you apply it to certain games. You don't want to switch it on in every single game, I think. As Brad
Agreed.
said, so.
I think that's correct. Should we talk about the Strix point? I'm curious about this.
Yes, we're going to move on to the next one. So Strix Point launched this Sunday at 6 a.m. Pacific time. An interesting launch. I'm not sure what it was tied to. We have a video you can look at on PCWorld as well as a story on the website. And overall, I would say, you know, I primarily did all the testing here. And I would say it's a pretty decent chip. Again, this is Zen 5 based. It also combines, you know, I don't know who used this term, but I thought it was pretty good. It was like full fat, although I don't know if that's a really good way to call it, but basically a Zen 5 core with all the cache. And then it combines it with Zen 5 compact cores, which are the same cores, but with reduced cache in order to make to occupy less die space on those. So yeah, you might suffer some performance and some things that need more cache or want more cache, but the whole idea of the compact cores and AMD's philosophy here is to get you that core density. Sometimes you just simply need, you know, throughput. You just need more cores if you're doing a 3D render, or you're using something where you just need more cores. And this is a way to get it into a very small package at a reasonable power savings. So all the numbers are on the video itself, but overall, CPU side, I would say, looking at just the classic, Cinebench Handbrake stuff, they have a decent lead over the Qualcomm parts. They also have, for my testing, I only had a Core Ultra 7, not a Core Ultra 9. So they also have a significant lead over the Core Ultra 7, which is, in AMD's defense, similar power constraints as a Core Ultra 7, because when you're talking about Core Ultra 9, you're looking at 45 TDP and generally a larger laptop paired with a discrete graphics. And then gaming, it does not disappoint as well, because the synthetics actually have arc fairly close to RDNA 890M, but actually the games that I ran, AMD had a clear advantage over arcs, not as significant over arc, but a significant advantage over Snapdragon X, which again, I don't really think you should be buying primarily for gaming anyway. But so yeah, overall good chip. I'm actually in the process of doing more testing on it, because I did do some battery life testing using UL Procyon, which is basically running the laptop down using simulated scripts in Office 365. But I'm doing more power testing right now, and it's been kind of eye-opening, because both of the laptops I used in this same class, I would consider. They both use OLED panels, whereas the Snapdragon X and the Surface Laptop 7 uses an IPS panel. So I've been doing some messing around with that, and it's been really kind of a shocker to be honest. I was kind of surprised by the results I'm getting.
How so?
Well, because people get really like going. I like to get into the comments. It's actually one of the nice things about having a smaller channel in a way, because the comments are somewhat manageable. You can actually have reasonable discussions, and people are like, why are you saying that Snapdragon X is better? Basically, I actually do think Snapdragon X is more power efficient. There's some other testing that I ran in the Snapdragon X video that I did. But I'm also saying that it's not the magic bullet. Like a lot of people thought you were going to get out of Snapdragon X and ARM. You're like, like double the battery life rundown of an x86 chip, because we all know x86 is terrible at battery life. And so it was really hard for me to say, because I had two laptops with 75 and 78 watt hour batteries versus one with a 54 watt hour battery. That 54 watt hour laptop with the Snapdragon also had a IPS panel, which doesn't really care that much about what the background color is. But on both of the OLED panels, they do care quite a bit about the color background. And the way that most people are in Office, you run it on a white background. Yeah. So on OLED, it's a significant performance hit. So just to give you an idea, Will, because it really is like, I was like, what? This is insane. So on the exact same ZenBook S16, I'm looking at my results from Procyon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe about 10 and a half hours for the ZenBook S16 with the Ryzen AI 9 HX370. That's a 28 watt part, by the way. So
that's an OLED screen or an IPS screen?
That's with an OLED.
Okay.
And I took that laptop and I basically ran it with an external panel. So I shut off the internal panel and I ran it HDMI out to just a little IPS portable panel that I have. And I went from 10 and a half to 28 hours of runtime. I was like, what? This is insane. So to go from 10 and a half hours to 28 hours by turning off that OLED, yeah, you're not going to have a laptop and not run it without a panel. But that just kind of gives you an idea that, yeah, in situations where OLED doesn't do well, which is white and light backgrounds, you're giving up a lot of battery life. And 28 hours is insane. And just to let you know, I'm still running the Core Ultra 7, which is the ZenBook 14 OLED. And again, that also had a 14-inch OLED panel, so smaller than that 16-inch panel. But it's still running, and it's going on, I think, 25 hours now. So just turning off the OLEDs on both those laptops tripled the battery life. So it's kind of like what I didn't think it would be that much of a difference. But, when I looked at all the results from the OEMs when they made their Snapdragon X announcements, they would say this battery life is based on the IPS panel version, right? And then they would actually some of them would break it out. And when you're on OLED, you're going to give up X amount of battery life. So
that would still take 10 hours of battery to have an OLED display.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's why, because a lot of people are like, well, why the hell would I want to have an OLED? That is a fairly significant, power drain going to OLED. But OLEDs are just, I think, that's why ASUS has been pushing so hard with OLEDs. OLED is a really, really big seller with consumers, right? Because you go into the store and you see OLED, it's like, I got that on my TV. That stuff is beautiful. So I think people are like, they want OLED, 10, 12 hours, that's plenty. I don't really need 30 or 20, 15 hours. So I think a lot of people do actually want, OLED panel, the beauty of an OLED over just having a, better battery life.
Well, I mean, does this mean, I kind of want to, I hesitate to ask you this because it's going to kick off a lot of testing. But does this mean if you run dark mode in Office on the same benchmarks, you're going to get better results?
Yes. On those laptops, I'm running dark mode, but the benchmark seems to default them to
Light.
mode. I need to go in there, and I mean, again, that's the problem is when you're looking at 28 hours just to run this thing down once,
Yeah.
and then so I have to do it again, and I do want to do that at some point because it's one of those terrible things about being a hardware reviewer, right? Because you're like, oh, that's really interesting, and I will throw out this tidbit. So on the Surface Laptop 7 with that Snapdragon X Elite with a 13.8 inch screen, we could say 14 inch. So that's a 14 inch panel, 120 hertz. All these are 120 hertz, by the way. The IPS, I ran that on external monitor. My battery life got worse.
On the external monitor. Wow.
On the external monitor.
And just to be clear, all of these monitors are powered externally. You're not powering them off of. Okay.
Yeah, so they're all powered externally. I'm making sure that they're actually running off of USB-C. These are portable monitors, so I'm running them outside. And I also use the same panel on all of them because I was afraid, like, well, I've got another panel. Should I try that? But no, let's make sure that's not a variable here. So I think the reason why the Surface Laptop 7, you give up about 10% of battery life here, even though you're not even paying that power budget for the screen, is because the Surface Laptop 7 does not have an HDMI port. So it has two USB-C, USB 4 ports, and then it has USB-A. So in order for me to run my external panel over HDMI, I had to use a USB-C to HDMI adapter. And of course, it's like, well, why would that even matter? Because who cares, right? Because it's just HDMI. But when you plug in, I saw this probably about 8 years ago, when you plug things into USB-C, and that USB-C is powered by an ASIC, back then it was Thunderbolt, I would see maybe a 6 or 7, 8% power cost by running it over, because you have to crank up that older Thunderbolt 3 ASIC back then. So I suspect on the Surface Laptop 7, when you're running external panels, even though, yes, you're powering that panel outside, the fact it's probably being offset by the fact that I have to now have, USB 4 chip hot, and maybe there's a redriver in there that's hot, and that's probably what I think is going on. And of course, the crappy thing is like, well, now I need to go back to both of those ZenBooks with the OLED and run those using USB-C or Thunderbolt, because then I will hopefully give a little bit of a power hit there. So it's the never-ending life of hardware testers, where it's like, okay, well, here's a variable. Do I have time to get to this? But still,
This actually talks to kind of why, we will have reviews of different desktop chips. Like we'll have the, 14900K, the 14700K, so on and so forth. Like Gordon will do these big initial reviews of a new laptop platform, like he just did. He did the video. We have an article on PCWorld. But in general, we review individual laptops rather than try to examine the chips, because we used to talk about this a lot. Like, it matters so much in laptops how they're configured. Like, the panels matter, the watt hour size of the battery matters, like thermals matter, like everything makes such a difference. So
how does Windows handle variable refresh rate and high refresh rate mobile monitors? Because I know on like the Mac and the iPad side, they're pretty aggressive about scaling down the frame rate when there's no motion on the screen. So like if you're scrolling a Safari window, it will crank the frame rate up really high while that scrolling's happening. As soon as you stop, it goes down to like 10 frames a second or something. So just fast enough that you don't detect flicker. Is Windows able to do that? Or is it just, if you have it set to run at 120 hertz, does it just run at 120 hertz all the time?
On the external panel that I used, it was a 60 hertz panel, and I didn't have any of the variable refresh rate stuff turned on. So I didn't really get a look at that, but that's an interesting question. To look at the variable refresh rate impact. I would imagine it's sort of similar, but probably not quite as polished as what Apple's doing, because Apple is hyper aggressive about it. So, and then also, it's a little tougher for OEMs because you're not talking about Apple and maybe having two screen vendors. You're talking about OEMs with 25 different vendors and
a million controllers
and a million controllers and a million different, not just the panel maker, but then you actually have different models from those panels. Both of these were Samsung OLEDs, by the way, in the ZenBook S16 and the and the ZenBook 14 OLED. They are beautiful. The OLEDs are simply beautiful, but I really do need to look at that. I kind of wish I had an old school. I have thought about picking one up, but they're not cheap. But an analog transducer that you hook up to an oscilloscope, so you can actually look at it externally. Because I generally don't like to run stuff. If I'm testing any laptop, I don't want anything to run on the host laptop because it throws things off, or it can throw things off. So, but I imagine it does crank the refresh rate down. And there's also other things that in fact, one of the things they were pushing with Lunar Lake, which we're going to talk about a little bit, is there's a new version of panel self refresh that they have that's going that saves additional power. So similar thing where panel self refresh, I believe, over DisplayPort will basically, you ain't changing nothing on the screen, so there's no reason to continue to redraw this thing at 90 hertz, right? So it just basically displays the same thing.
I mean, it makes sense that this is something that should be handled at a hardware level, and the operating system shouldn't have to know a whole lot about, right? Is if pixels are changing, crank it up, and if pixels aren't changing, leave it low.
Yeah, it's one thing that I kind of wish that laptops had was a way to tell you how much power the individual components consume. They can sort of do that with the CPU. You can read that kind of with the SSDs, and even RAM is reported out. But it'd be kind of cool to see that for everything else as well, because I think it would help, especially if you were making, because interestingly, if you are AMD or Intel, you get blamed for everything. Like, oh my God, this thing gets terrible battery life. It's like, well, you're running an OLED panel with a white screen at 1,000 nits. Yeah, I know, but it's your fault because your X80 chip is using. Oh, okay, But it feels like it'd be neat if they had that in the OS, because then you could see that so much of it's going to your storage, so much of it's going to your memory, so much of it's going to this. Your discrete. It would just be nice to see where it's all kind of broken up in more granularity.
I mean, Microsoft tried to do that when they tried to force everybody to go to Windows 8 apps, because you get a per app breakdown of power usage, but it's only for the Windows 8 style apps, not the classic APIs. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot built into Windows for measuring power, but it unfortunately doesn't seem to ever turn up. And also, again, wouldn't it be really neat just to see like, oh, my laptop, what the hell? Why is the RAM using so much power now, right? So,
yeah. So
I have a question for you, Gordon.
Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question. When I edited Gordon's piece, I went on the live on the site and I was reading it. The question I had when I was done, I was sitting there, I was thinking about it is, okay, so this is the first x86 chip that meets the Copilot Plus criteria. Even if it's not officially branded Copilot Plus yet, I'm not sure. I don't think that Windows update is out.
Yeah.
But so this looks pretty darn competitive. If you are one of the people who cares about these AI features, or feels like you should, if you're going to buy a laptop right now, you might as well get one with an AI NPU in it. Do you think that, considering there's no software compatibility issues with AMD hardware, do you think that this shuts the door on Qualcomm, or do you think they still have a compelling case for Copilot Plus laptops?
Honestly, I'm still not there with Copilot Plus as far as being an absolute feature that you have to have.
Oh, it sucks. Don't buy it for it.
Yeah, I think, it doesn't make any sense that Microsoft has not been able to convince me that you absolutely must have something for the AI features at the moment. But I can definitely see that road coming, and it potentially could be really cool. And at the same time, we've seen plenty of like, wow, that looks really cool. But this road just ended. And what do you do now? Well, you need to turn around and go back because it's going nowhere. We push this feature and nobody cares about it. So, yeah, no, I don't think I care about Copilot Plus at the moment. That could change very much. And then does this shut the door? Or the real question is, because this is a very, very fast chip. It does outperform Qualcomm on a lot of things. There are some things that Qualcomm still does really well in. Office has a slight edge. It also, outguns, a lot of the Meteor Lake products out there. But I would say generally AMD's in front of them. I still actually, it's interesting because I like to read reviews. I like to read Reddit. I like to see what people are thinking about all of these products. And there are people that are just simply hard set on absolutely not. I will not give up x86 because I want everything to work. And I totally understand that. And a part of me thinks that, it is definitely a little harder to make the case for, Snapdragon X with this new AMD chip. It'll probably get a little tougher when Lunar Lake comes out as well. But I'm surprisingly very soft. And when I mean soft, I'm not like an absolute no. You have to be stupid to buy a Snapdragon X laptop, because I still think there are pluses. And the main thing to me is, I'm going to guess most of the Snapdragon X laptops, if they're like the Surface Laptop 7, are very quiet. They're not totally fanless. They're not MacBook Air kind of quiet, because that's a true fanless design. But they are very, very well behaved. AMD is also fairly well behaved over Intel, but I would say, I'm going to bet, and I've only seen one Snapdragon X laptop, but if you just simply want a laptop that is just, the fans just don't crank up for some strange reason, you have no idea why. You go to download something, like, do I really need the fans to come on to download something? But, it does. I think Snapdragon X really does give you that, because they seem to have done a lot of tuning to give you very, to be less aggressive with the fans. And also because the SoC definitely seems slightly less aggressive with power. You don't have to eat into the fans as much. So I think there is a case to be made for it. But I get it, because there are people that are hard no. And I'm with you on that sometimes, because it sucks to you suddenly can't run this one thing. And I could have run this if I bought a brand new AMD or Intel laptop, right? So
that's actually pretty compelling for me. I'm very anti-noise in my computers. I purposely buy big graphics cards just so I can have them be as quiet as possible, not as overclocked as possible. And a lot of my standard work stuff can be done with, Office. So I'm a writer. I work for the internet. So
right.
Browsers and Office works just fine on those. So noise levels is actually could be a pretty compelling case if I'm looking at roughly similarly priced laptops for work.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a case to be made there, because, again, I have a sample of one with a Surface Laptop 7, but it is a beautiful laptop. They do a lot of Microsoft things on there. They charge a premium for it, and then they at least give you some of that premiumness back in it. Like the trackpad is as far as I can tell. So typically most consumer laptops, even a high end, again, the S16 here it's a $1,700 laptop. It's got a piano hinge style trackpad. And if you don't know what that means, it's basically there's a hinge at the top. So as you get closer to the top, it gets harder to push, because now you're basically all the way near the hinge. On the Surface Laptop 7, it looks like it's electronic haptic feedback. So very similar to what we've seen with Apple. And it's a beautiful laptop, and they've tuned it really well. The keyboard's really nice, so you get a lot of those nice things. It does cost a ton of money for it, and I guess my other argument, why I would have imagined I would have been a hard no on Qualcomm or ARM on Windows, is because I also realize that a lot of people use their laptops like Chromebooks.
Yeah.
Right. You fire up browser, you fire Office up. Maybe you run Photoshop. Most people aren't, because it's not cheap. It's not free. So I honestly think a lot of people, when they're buying these, premium Ultrabooks, you could just get by with a really nice, Chromebook too. So it's not like, you're going to buy it for gaming.
So
we ran a piece this week, 10 reasons that Snapdragon laptops are kind of like Ultrabooks, actually, or Chromebooks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that some people might be insulted by that, but that's actually a compliment in some ways.
Except for the price. They're a little spendy for a Chromebook, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Gordon, did you have any benchmarks that hit the NPU stuff? Did you see any more AI juice from the slightly overtopped Ryzen versus the Snapdragon?
I did not. So there is a new, Ryzen AI 9 370?
375 is the juiced up one.
AI 9, but it's HX. That's
Oh,
the
yeah.
correct way. So it's AI 9 HX. There's a new 375 that basically the graphics cores are the same, the core count is the same, clocks are the same, but they have a juiced up NPU to give you 55 tops. And I'm pretty skeptical of like where that even matters at this point. There are some benchmarks you can do to run on the NPU or to run an AI, but it just seems like it's so early. Like it's like, I would rather know, frankly, how it performs in Premiere, right? So I have a Premiere score for Meteor Lake. I have a Premiere score for Strix Point. I would rather have that over the NPU because I want to see when the actual NPU applications show up for it to actually matter. So
the way I kind of look at NPUs these days is don't worry about the numbers whatsoever as long as it's a Copilot plus PC already labeled. Like to me, it's like 40, 50, 55. It doesn't really matter. You just need to hit roughly that ballpark to enable those Windows features. And then it's going to be months, if not years, to wait and see what developers actually use those NPUs for to see if it even matters that 15 different tops.
It's been interesting over the last couple of weeks. I don't know if you follow the idea that the money people often lead the way on whether things are going to work out or not for new technologies. Since that Goldman Sachs report came out a couple of weeks ago, like the tide has started to turn, and people are like, wait, how much money is OpenAI going to have to raise to stay solvent after 2024? There's a lot more questions, and the key thing from that Goldman Sachs report was, hey, we're 18 months after ChatGPT, and still nobody has like an application that people are excited about for generative AI stuff. So yeah, maybe these are just going to be these little processors that sit inside our laptops that just don't really do anything. They're just aging.
That is entirely possible, right? This ends up basically going nowhere, but I don't think it will. But as we know, oftentimes you introduce something brand new, it takes literally years for it to be supported. And then you have to have a use case scenario. You got to have that killer app, right? You got to have a spreadsheet or something that makes everybody like, oh my God, I have to go out and buy one of these computers from Toys R Us, or where the hell people were buying computers from back then.
Well, it's funny. I was out with a friend who does like hardcore data analysis on like they have a cluster of giant NVIDIA GPUs that they use for like biological data analysis. I was talking to them about this, and I was like, "Hey, are you excited about these NPUs in the laptops? Is going to change the way you do work?" And they were like, "Well, how fast is it?" I told them, and they were like, "No, I don't care. It doesn't matter at that speed. It's a baby toy for babies." So. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It's interesting. Go ahead. I was gonna say, where do you end up on these AMD on this? Like, are these buys for you? Are these soft buys? Are you excited about where they're going with this? Or
no, it's definitely recommend. I mean, obviously it throat punches Meteor Lake pretty hard. Meteor Lake and a bigger, fatter laptop, which again has a higher TDP, would represent better. Would weigh more, but I would say generally AMD in the x86 world is ahead of everybody at the moment. I give them the edge. I will also I would give them the edge over Qualcomm parts in sort of raw performance in a lot of things. Not everything, but they do pretty well there. So we just really have to wait for the other shoe to drop in Lunar Lake. So.
Yeah. Well,
which, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the next question. Is it seems like Intel saw the numbers and we're like, okay, we're shipping this next month.
Yeah, it's official. If you go to PCWorld.com, you can see a story by my coworker Mark Hockman, which says it's official. Intel is going to launch its next gen mobile Core Ultra processor, codenamed Lunar Lake, at IFA in Berlin on September 3rd via its live stream event at 9 a.m. p.m.
I think this is going to be everybody look under your seat. There's a Lunar Lake taped up under there situation.
I would imagine if they're doing a launch there, you're going to see Intel will have a lot of laptop makers out there. They are all going to show up in force to talk about how great Lunar Lake is. And I'm sure they will also be very unhappy. And I was saying this earlier because like, if you're a PC OEM and you're still trying to sell those Meteor Lake laptops, to which you are finally now getting your orders fulfilled from Intel, it's probably going to kind of suck to have Intel continuing to beat the drum on Lunar Lake. So,
But I mean, maybe you had said earlier that they had trouble filling the channel for the entirety of Meteor Lake's lifetime. So maybe there isn't like a big outstanding queue of Meteor Lake orders, and they can just roll them straight into Lunar Lake parts, right?
I think when Intel did its Computex briefing, they basically were saying like, hey, we started the AI era, by the way, with the 5 tops of Meteor Lake, and we've shipped X millions, and we're going to ship X millions through this year.
So you get 10 laptops, and it's equal to 1 Copilot Plus PC.
Basically, it's like you're like Michael Dell, and you're at home. You're in your robe. You're reading the Wall Street Journal because that's what you read if you're a businessman, right?
Yeah.
You're like, ding dong. Like, what the hell? Who's coming over at Sunday at this hour? Go to the front door. It's Intel. It's like, oh, hey, yeah, I got the order for you. Here's that 10 million Meteor Lakes you ordered. It's like, I wanted those last year when I could sell them. Like, you've been talking. I'm sure they're like, really? I got to sell this? And hope people don't get so jazzed by Lunar Lake that they're not going to buy it. I just kind of feel that's one of those moments where all those chips are going to show up and they're going to be like, oh, man.
I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of planned for the Meteor Lake generation laptops to be kind of meh, because nobody would go on the record, but at CES this year, like everyone I would talk to who has anything to do with the laptop industry, just like, yeah, we're launching Meteor Lake right now, but stay tuned halfway through the year. Lunar Lake's the thing you're going to be wanting to watch out for. So even the industry's kind of like, these chips are fine. Meteor Lake's fine. Yeah, it has that 5 tops NPU, but watch for the next one. That's what you're going to want to look for. So I wouldn't be surprised if they plan their ordering around that.
Yeah. No, I can see that, but I still think like, Intel was very public about the fact that if they had more Meteor Lakes, they would have been able to sell them. So there is demand for it. But when you're looking at a launch of Lunar Lake in a month and all the headlines and everybody talking about how this thing is like better than Swiss cheese and maybe taking the efficiency crown away from one of the other vendors, it's sucky to try to sell the 2023 in the year 2024 car. So I think that's just the hard thing. So, but yeah,
we will see some discounts. I'm all about them juicy laptop deals.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a good, and I think the other thing that's probably left unsaid here is the performance of the APU, right? Because in gaming, it's pretty damn impressive. So again, you got the CPU side that's really good, and then graphics performance on Radeon, IGP has always been pretty spectacular. So you could guess that next generation handhelds are going to, get a nice little decent bump in performance from Strix Point or whatever the derivative is for handhelds.
Yeah, it like I think that all the frame gen stuff that they're doing, like all the stuff that they're doing, all their pieces are ticking together and the gears are meshing up real nice, and it's feeling like they're hitting a real moment for AMD.
Yeah. And then I know I think I almost have to eat my words because I've never recommended anything IGP for gaming remotely other than casual gaming. But here's like I was getting Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege 19 by 10, 1920 by 1080.
Thank you.
Medium preset, 154 frames a second out of that Ryzen AI 9 HX370 and Radeon A90.
That's
Core Ultra 7, 155H, not bad either, frankly, with Arc at 127. Clearly, though, Ryzen AI 9 is ahead of it. And then, Snapdragon X Elite X1E 80 is 38.7 frames a second. So,
what's the IQ like for that? On medium settings, it's going to be a little fuzzy, right? But it still looks pretty good.
When I do a lot of game testing, and I try to keep it as simple as possible to not screw things up. So this is the medium preset in Rainbow Six Siege, and that's a 50% render.
Okay.
So it's definitely, they're upsampling their render just to get the frame rates up for a lot of people. So it's not bad again, but you're not playing native. This thing has like a 2880 by 1800 panel OLED panel. You're not going to be playing native, but the fact that you can actually get 154 frames a second in a you know, in a esports game like Siege is like, you know, you can actually recommend these laptops for some games, right? I still think you should buy discrete graphics if you can't afford it, but this really ain't bad. So it makes me realize like, wow, this is like NVIDIA really gave up this category, and it just feels like it's going to come back to bite them because both Intel and AMD are just only going to continue to improve the performance. And then NVIDIA is going to look back and like, how am I going to squeeze back into these thin and light laptops? You know, they used to have those MX parts that they used to sell, but I can see vendors going, what the hell do I need an MX part for? These IGPs are awesome.
What did these sound like when they're running Siege at 150 frames a second? Does it sound like jet engines, or is it just like fans ticking over a little bit?
Well, the ZenBook 14 definitely is got classic Intel fan noise, I would say. So, you know, like you taxi to take off. Anytime you hit anything, hit all the cores hard, or you're going to be running the IGP hard for a while, it's going to crank the fans up. The ZenBook S16, a little better. I haven't actually done my sound measurements because I don't have an anechoic chamber, but generally AMD's been a little bit better on that. And then Surface Laptop 7 with Snapdragon X Elite, you'd be hard pressed to hear it. Yeah, there's a fan noise, but it's definitely the most quiet of all three of these.
If you're sitting in a cafe and you're playing some Rainbow Six Siege, are the people going to look at you like your computer is about to explode if you have the AMD one?
No. I mean,
Okay.
I'd say it's not bad. I have to, again, I will add one more test to the pile, Will.
Yeah.
So in
Sorry,
addition
Gordon.
to testing with dark mode, I also have to get out the sound
Build the
meters.
anechoic chamber, and then
There you go.
roll on.
Steve has a little tiny one he bought. Maybe he's like, hey, I don't need this damn thing.
There you go.
Probably costs about $1 million to ship it, but
We could get some foam cubes and build a box that you put in your crawl space and just lower the machine down in there and close it up and run it for a minute. It'll be fine. What could go wrong?
so we did the Lunar Lake news.
Yep.
Brad has to go really soon. So
Yep.
we got any
Go.
Brad focused questions? I think we should hit him up.
Let's go to Q&A. And just real quick, so any of the deep dives that Gordon had done, that's available at the piece. There's an article on PCWorld website. Go check that out. Description and link below. And then there's also a video on our PCWorld channel as well.
And the battery thing's coming soon, right, Gordon? The full battery.
Yeah,
test.
more battery. I do have the overall battery test, so it's not like I didn't run it. Winner Snapdragon, and despite having a 54 watt-hour battery, yay. I'll be looking at more power consumption of the chips in another story, as well as getting to the insane amount of runtime these OLED laptops give you if you kill the OLED.
So check back that soon.
Okay.
All right, Will, you got Q&A for us?
Yeah, I can hit some questions for us. Let's see. We have from friend of the show, Liquid R. They ask, should buyers/builders in the market right now avoid Intel processors? At what point should consumers assume an all clear for Intel?
Brad's answering this one.
All right.
No, go ahead, Brad.
If you're looking to buy right now, I would wait 2 more weeks until that new patch comes out, and then I would buy my Intel laptop, my Intel desktop, and apply that firmware update that'll keep this from happening.
I mean, I think you can also put lock PL1, PL2, and probably be safe if you're really worried about it, or just the Intel fail-safe BIOSes should keep you okay for long enough to get going right now. But also the AMD machines are pretty nice right now too. So I think, yeah, like I switched over a few months ago and I have no regrets. So it's the first time I've run an AMD desktop as my main in about 15 years. So
it's comfort level.
No big issues.
no,
Yeah.
it's smooth 30 everywhere. No, it's been really smooth everywhere I went. Yeah.
So how are you? So Brad, you're saying you would wait 2 weeks because that's when they're going to push it out?
I'm going to rescind. I'm going to say I would look at performance and make the smart buying decision that you need to make. I would not be nervous about buying these Intel chips right now, knowing that's coming out this next month. Considering the issue, it takes time to kick in and really damage stuff.
Well, and also since they did say, hey, if you're affected by this, we're going to make it right. right? So
Yeah.
worst case is you have to deal with RMAs and send a part back at some point. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. I don't think.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think this comes down to everybody's comfort level, and I just wanted to hear from everybody else here. I didn't ask Willis, you okay with Intel, or you don't want to jump into this?
I'm okay.
All right, so I think it's going to come down to how comfortable you are and simply not knowing, and this is the terrible situation that Intel's backed itself into by taking so long to come up with a decision here. Because would it scare me? No, because obviously I'm more sophisticated. Not I'm more sophisticated, but I'm saying if I had to do a processor swap, it's not going to kill me. I don't have a custom loop on the box under me, so that's not a problem. If my daughter's 14th gen, i7 K part goes up in smoke, I'd be really, really pissed.
Yeah.
Really pissed. Because
it's got a custom loop, right?
It's got a custom loop on it, and it's hard. It's hard, it's a hard loop, and it's just like, if I have to break that, you know what? I'm going to be really, really pissed off. So I would say I would probably wait at this point. There's just so much FUD with this going on right now, and frankly, a lot of it's well-deserved, right? Because it's blown up to where this could have been probably not as big as a deal to where it's like everybody's freaked out about this. So I would wait. You've got Arrow Lake coming out in September, so why not wait for Arrow Lake? That's a different chip. So I would wait, frankly, for this next gen chips from AMD and Intel to launch. And for me, it really has shaken my confidence in it, which is scary because when you don't know, you're just gonna you just want to avoid it. So I would generally say you're probably okay. I feel it's probably okay. It's not that widespread. At the same time, the average person coming to ask me something, I'm like, it's like, listen, dude or dudette, I'm like, you can't, if you bought this chip and the thing goes up in smoke in 3 months, you're going to blame me for that. So,
and really, if you wait till the end of the month, theoretically, this microcode patch should be out. It should be fixed.
Yeah.
Within 2 weeks, we'll have an idea of all the reviews for the AMD Ryzen 9000 series. My advice is straight up, don't buy right now and wait. I would wait for all that to shake out, especially with AMD launching this month.
Yeah, that's probably the real answer, right? Is we're usually, I'm not a big fan of, if you need a computer, you need a computer, buy the computer you need. But when we're literally 18 days or something from the embargoes on the first wave, just
right.
See if you can hold on.
Yeah, if you can hold on. And then again, Arrow Lake is apparently right around the corner too. So that's a different socket. It always stinks to be the last CPU in the last generation socket. So
it seems scary to be the first generation in a whole new process, whole new architecture. Like that's I like to let those ease in a little bit before I buy into one of those, I think, too, though.
Yeah, I'm actually okay with it because it's generally not been a problem to be the first in line for these things. But again, this is the mess with the 13, 14 gen thing. It's just it's got everybody so freaked out. You just don't know what to think. And even though I really do think most people would be fine, especially Brad, you're right. Once the microcode is out and once that's rolled out by the board vendors, frankly, we'll have a handle on it, right? I think. But it's still something you should think long and hard about.
Friend of the show, Falcon Northwest in the chat, reminds us to remind people if they do have a 13th or 14th gen machine to update their BIOS right now. Don't wait for the microcode. You're going to update now, and then you're going to update again when the microcode fix comes out. So for your particular boards.
Thanks,
yeah, and then Brad, you gotta punch out.
Yeah, I do. I was saying thanks to Kel, and I do have to get out of here. So it's nice talking with Joe.
See you, Brad.
All right, thanks, Brad.
Thanks for coming.
Adios.
You want to do one or two more questions, Gordon? You got a minute?
Well,
or?
I just want to update people because the other thing that came out this week is Sean over at The Verge is able to get intel to say basically the microcode update does not fix anything. If it's damaged, it's damaged at this point, and that was the headlines I saw.
Their statement said that too, though, right? Like they separated it.
Yeah, so I have a couple of statements from Intel as well. Because I know a lot of people are like a lot of this is frustration because the information is just kind of dripped out this whole time, which lets people run to their imagination corners and freak out. My question was, will the microcode update prevent damage to processors that have not degraded yet? Intel is confident that the microcode patch will be an effective preventative solution for processors already in service, though validation continues to ensure that scenarios of instability reported to Intel regarding its Core 13, Core 14 Gen desktop processors are addressed. Also, I do want to point out, this is interesting because I don't think, I guess my fault for not writing a story about this, but you're hearing about this here. It is possible the patch will provide some stability improvements to currently impacted processors. However, customers experiencing instability on their 13th or 14th gen desktop processor-based systems should contact Intel customer support for further assistance. And then I have another question. Obviously, people are very nervous about this. Will there be additional disclosures and details made, and when can we expect them? Intel targets to release a production microcode, really not much new here, by mid-August or sooner, and will share additional details on the microcode patch at that time. So basically middle of August is when we should get some more information from Intel. And then finally, the other thing too is the elevated voltage the root cause? Because Intel has determined that elevated operating voltage is the primary cause of the instability issues in some 13th and 14th gen desktop processors. Analysis is basically a similar response. Basically, analysis of return processors confirms that the elevated operating voltage is stemming from a microcode algorithm in incorrect voltage request to the processor. Intel investigation continues in order to ensure that all scenarios of instability reported to Intel are addressed on Intel 13th and 14th gen desktop processors, including any aspects that may be unrelated to elevated voltage. So basically, hey, we're still looking at it, but this does look like it's the main cause. And the last thing, which we've talked about recently, and this does confirm it as well, as Sean's story confirmed it. Does this impact these are answers to my questions from Intel. Does this impact non-K SKUs as well? I noticed that the latest statement refers to desktop processors broadly rather than just KKF. Intel 13th and 14th gen desktop processors with 65 or higher base power, including K, KF, KS, and 65 watt non-K variants, could be affected by the elevated voltage issues. However, this does not mean the listed desktop processors are inevitably impacted by the issue. So basically, yeah, it's possible it could infect these non-K parts, but it doesn't mean it, right? Not 100% of them are bad. There's a list of these chips that are like Core i7 3700, Core i9, and there's even a Core i5 3600, a Core i5 3400, Core i5 4600, and Core i5 4600 are also potentially impacted. But again, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. It just means it could possibly happen.
So is possibly doing a lot of work there across the board from, hey, this microcode, it is possible that this microcode will fix your affected CPU, your impacted CPU. And it didn't seem like there was a whole lot new there. They were explicit about some things that were just strongly implied on the initial statements, which is good, I guess.
Yeah.
But it seems weird. It all seems like, hey, if they had just come clean about this sooner and locked down what the problem was sooner, this would have been much less of an issue than it is now. So
no, I agree, because that's how you that anytime you when you see a politician like, hey, the gold bullion you found in my pockets, I'm going to do a press conference about that now. We'll talk about an hour and 2 hours about it, just to get out of the media's attention. Then there's nothing else to talk about. Oh yeah, didn't that guy have all those gold bullion coins?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but who cares?
It's probably nothing. Yeah, the news cycle's already moved on.
they couldn't do that. And, again, we don't know why necessarily, but definitely part of it was they didn't simply know. So they can't just start answering questions authoritatively without actually having the question. So it may have just been a crappy situation they couldn't control, but we're still here nonetheless, where people are still freaked out. And I'm seeing a lot of, I would call probably, anger pony riding at this point, because people at this point just simply want to get people worked up. Again, credit to, Sean at the Verge, Paul Alcorn. There's a lot of people that are actually talking to, Steve and Wendell and everything. There are people actually going out there, still doing, the what's it called? Shoe leather. They're doing the work to find out, talk to Intel, talk to vendors. So that is still happening out there. So there are some people that simply just want to put out a salacious headline to get people freaked out, though, it feels like.
Well, so the other thing that I think it's important to go back to is on that first announcement, the first release that they put out on the message boards. Still a weird place to make this kind of announcement, but whatever. They did say, hey, if you're affected by this, we're gonna make it right. Which right. At the end of the day, for me, that's the thing that matters first and most, is that, hey, if we sold you something that is bum part or is going to fail before it should, whether you did something wrong or not, we're going to make it right for you. And that like is a lot of goodwill. I wish they'd done that 6 months ago instead of waiting 6 or 7 months for that to roll out. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm with you too, because simply having that statement like, hey, you know what? We know this is a problem. We acknowledge it's a problem. It is a complicated problem. We are looking for an answer. We're going to do what we've always done, which is stand behind our products, though. So if you have a problem, we will make you whole, right?
Yeah.
The fact they didn't come out and say something even remotely similar to that early on, I think, contributed to it. But at the same time, maybe that's because you can't say that unless, again, the lawyers sign off on it. Like, you have no idea what it is. You could end up basically having to sell every single asset you have in order to make everybody whole. So maybe that's something they don't do. But, again, we hope that Intel does it like they have before. There are many cases of Intel making people whole again with problems. So I hope that's what's happening here. And I don't have anything to doubt that isn't happening here. But again, people are freaked out at this point, and there's nothing that's going to stop people from posting stories and getting on Reddit and just, getting people worked up about it. And, for some of it's rightly so, because frankly, when something goes on for this long, the imagination's going to run away. So, I don't know.
It just gets worse and worse the longer the speculation goes, is the thing. And that's the way it always is. So they've done this before, they should know. And I mean, I guess at some point you just have to get to the part where the Tyler Durden lines cross, right? Where the cost of making it right is cheaper than the cost of dealing with the lawsuits. And anyway, here we are. One more question?
Yeah.
Are there any more?
Yeah, we got a couple more.
There's a couple more. Yeah, I got one.
Oh, yeah, go.
Yeah. So from Discord, mostly running at Stockish, asking, after watching Gordon's Ryzen AI deep dive testing video, why did AMD stick AI into the product name?
They did it just simply because they're a business and they like to pay their shareholders money. AI is a buzzword, and frankly, if I ran a technology company that made mouse pads, I would add AI to my mouse pads, because that's just simply how it works. I know you think that's stupid. I agree with that. But again, you know what? If you're running a business and you tell me that I have Gordon Ung's AI mouse pads, and now I suddenly double my savings because I have an AI, or double my profit and numbers shipped because I have AI on my mouse pad's name, you would be insane not to do that. So this is simply a cynical approach, and frankly, again, the right thing to do for a for-profit company that wants to make money. And I will also point out the precedent that happened before, because we all slapped our heads when AMD decided to call the brand new Athlon the Athlon XP, to coincide with the brand new Windows XP that was launching.
Yeah.
Now, of course, people are like, this has nothing to do with an operating system. You are just simply playing off of the millions of dollars that Microsoft is putting into marketing. I'm sure the response was yes. Do I look stupid to you? If they're going to put millions of dollars getting people used to the word XP, and I want people to buy it because my product also supports XP, that's what you do. So yes, that's why they put the AI in there.
Also,
but yes, I know, cynical people, we can laugh.
They couldn't do Centrino back then because that was an Intel thing, and that was moving a lot of hardware in the mobile space. So they had to just glom onto the whole XP craze.
I guess it did, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I always hear them mentioning the Centrino moment, but again, at the time, it was like I already had, we already had a core chip. We basically had a Pentium chip, and it had Wi-Fi. What exactly does Centrino do, right? Just it tells you it has Wi-Fi. Like,
Yeah.
that was the whole thing. But
And it made the little song dun 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 dun, and then that was worth an extra $100, so you should buy that one instead.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, that jingle is the proof of how powerful jingles are, right?
Yeah.
It's just
Oh yeah, my daughter knows what that jingle is. They haven't used that jingle in her lifetime, but if you play that song, she's like, "Why are you making the computer jingle, Dad?" And I'm like, "Well, there you go."
they don't do that. They still have the jingle, don't they?
No.
The Intel jingle.
I don't think does Intel do TV ads anymore? I don't think I see Intel ads ever.
I thought
Oh, well, you might see it around holidays.
I thought I saw something on the Olympics ads. Did I not?
Well, you saw a Google ad about how you could get Gemini. People were so upset about that they turn off the YouTube comments on the ad. But I don't think I saw any Intel. Maybe I did see an Intel ad. You might be
I
right.
thought so. Yeah.
I definitely saw Microsoft Copilot Plus PC ads
Oh.
with like a Surface laptop. But I don't think I saw an Intel ad, but I could be wrong.
I have to look
By
at
the
that.
way, it's officially known as they have the sheet music on timeline.intel.com/1995/ the Intel Bong.
Bong?
With dashes between them. It says Intel Spiral, but the Intel Bong was written by Los Angeles composer Walter Warzawa in 1994. It helped Intel become more noticeable as it transitioned from print to radio and TV advertising. Oh, wow. That's a bummer. They left magazines out of that. We want some of that Bong money, too.
I would have expected an Intel Bong to be something that was a reused part, but I don't think we can talk about that on this show.
I think it's actually, I believe it's trademark, too, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure. Copyrighted, probably, right? Maybe
Yeah,
it's trademarked,
copyright.
too. I think you can trademark that kind of sound. I don't know. That's an
I think
IP
they
lawyer
still have it
question.
around. So it's just, I'm surprised that NVIDIA and AMD haven't come up with their own jingle. Of course, it takes, decades to get people to recognize the jingle, but
Yeah.
you just pick a bad song and you repeat it forever till people are sick of it. And I don't want to mention Cars for Kids, but
Wow.
it's a good song.
Let's
it's
not.
a good song.
Wow. Yeah, I do think it's worth reading the whole name of the product. It's the AMD Ryzen AI 9 HX 370, which is a mouthful.
Yes.
Uh,
yes. No, it really, that one throws me before the loop because that was, and I thought Snapdragon was tough.
Yeah, right?
For the Snapdragon X Elite X1E-80-100.
That sounds like a good old fashioned part, right? Like that sounds like something you get a Mopar version of that and put it in your car.
Yeah, like an oil filter part, right? You go down and like, I need an X1E-80-100.
Yeah, it's a Fram X79-E-4, right?
The funny thing is, Intel, because they were first, people groaned, of course, over Core Ultra. It's actually pretty easy because if you look at both Ryzen and Snapdragon's model numbers, Core Ultra 7 155H, that's like, wow, that's genius. That's pretty easy to remember because I've already committed Core Ultra 7 155H and Core Ultra 9 185H to my brain. Whereas it's going to take me a little while to figure out Ryzen AI 9 HX 375.
Well, so the question friend of the show Sneaky has is, can we expect a new naming decoder wheel from AMD every 2 years? Because of their constant changes.
No, I think they've given up. So basically, AI processors are going to be. I was actually going to do a video on how to to decode all the new CPU models. But the Ryzen AI 300 is only basically this current generation and newer. Whereas, which I'm glad they didn't try to renumber the previous Ryzen 9, Ryzen 7, 7000 and 8000 series chips. They just stuck with those numbers.
Okay. Well, I think that's it for me. Unless you have anything else, Willis.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
We're good.
No other questions? All right, let me find my notes. We are going to get out of here. Check back next week for your fix of PC Talk on the Full Nerd. For audio listeners, subscribe to us on iTunes, Pocket Cast, or Spotify. And if you're on one of those services, please leave a review. Every time you do, I'm trying to think of something clever with bongs. I really can't believe it's called the Intel Bong.
I know, right? I don't think maybe people didn't know what bongs were in 1995.
Oh,
I think they did in 94. Every time you do, Intel comes up with a new bong, or AMD uses something like AMF. You can look that up. Basically, that's adios. MF is what that's. Of course, this is AFMF, but they also had an AMF. So basically, adios.
Not yippee-ki-yay.
Not yippee-ki-yay. Send questions and comments to thefullnerd at PCWorld.com. Thanks for coming. I'm Gordon Ung with Brad Chakras, has already left. Will Smith still in the studio.
See you next week.
And Will Slot's going to hit the off switch.
All right. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we will see you next time. Bye.